Welcome to Good Game, your no BS insights for crypto founders.
The DJs are really on Solana now. And there's a reason for that. It's because when you trade those newly launched illiquid meme coins, the traders do care about transaction fees. And Solana is...
And in fact, slippage too.
Yes.
Quick example I can give you is I had a friend who's completely out of the space, a retail friend who I told to buy WIF. And came back the next day, he goes, yo, there was no slippage. It was very low slippage. There was no transaction fee cost. This is crazy cheap. I'm like, welcome to Solana.
Looking for your next startup idea in crypto? Check out our request for startups list and get inspired at alliance.xyz/ideas.
Welcome to Good Game. Today, we're going to be discussing all things that are happening in crypto, all the latest trends. And as you can tell, we're wearing our hats that represent dogwifhat to pay a tribute to the viral meme that's been going around for the past few months. There's a lot to talk about. We've been out for a bit. We had to take a quick break, but we're ready to talk about all the things that are happening. And so much has happened. What are some things that are top of mind for you, Qiao?
There are so many topics we can talk about for 2024. Well, the BTC ETF just approved.
Yeah.
And then the ETH ETF is next. Payment, RWA, these two things I've been tweeting about nonstop on Twitter. Really excited. Still pretty non-consensus. Bitcoin ordinals, layer 2s.
Yes.
Penguins on Ethereum, all the Solana meme coins. Also really, really interesting. Not that it's, again, a lot of people still look down on these meme coins and shit coins, but you can learn a lot about the ecosystem itself by looking at the meme coin trading. Gaming, DePIN, DeSci. There are some interesting things happening in DeFi as well. We can talk about all of those things. And of course, we're going to talk about our price predictions for the end of the year.
Awesome. Yeah, a couple of things I want to touch on is, parallelized EVMs. They seem to be getting a lot of traction. I'd love to dive deeper into EigenLayer and Celestia as well. And we can talk about the upcoming Jupiter launch as well. That's going to be, I believe, Meow launched it on January 31st.
Meow.
That's his code name on the 31st. So let's get started. Why don't we talk about WIF? I think, we have the hats on, and every time, almost every other tweet these days is about WIF. I thought, when it first came out was probably I sent out a tweet maybe 6 months ago, and the tweet was like, the harder I laugh, the more I buy. This was one of those moments.
This is the funniest meme since Bald for me. But Bald rugged.
Bald would have been great, but they rugged, unfortunately. But yeah, I'd say this is probably the best meme since Bald.
My original thesis was that Ansem is the main character of the cycle, and WIF is his pet. That was the original thesis. But as time went on, I realized how scalable this meme is. Like literally, it's vampire attacking every PFP, every other meme. Like, I don't know if you saw the Phantom logo, a bunch of other project logos, putting a hat on, right?
The hat extends, the hat itself can extend to any meme possible, right?
That's right. Which
adds to the virality of the actual meme itself. Yeah. Which I thought was great.
But there's something I want to touch on. I don't know if, you use DEX Screener, but I don't know if our audience does. But essentially, DEX Screener is a tool for, it's like a CoinGecko, but for like shitcoins. Coins that are just launched. And usually can't find those on CoinGecko yet. CoinGecko has a Gecko terminal, but that's like similar to DEX Screener. But anyway, the point being, you can find all these newly launched meme coins on DEX Screener. And DEX Screener supports a number of blockchains, including Solana, Ethereum, Polygon, blah, blah, blah. And if you tally the top 100 trending coins on DEX Screener, 2/3 of them are on Solana these days. And the rest is split between all the other chains. That just goes to show how, it's number one, where the DGens are. The DGens are really on Solana now. And there's a reason for that. It's because when you trade those newly launched illiquid meme coins, the traders do care about transaction fees. And Solana is...
And in fact, slippage too.
Yes.
Quick example I can give you is I had a friend who's completely out of the space, a retail friend who I told to buy WIF. And came back the next day. He goes, yo, there was no slippage. It was very low slippage. There was no transaction fee cost. This is crazy cheap. I'm like, welcome to Solana.
Yeah. Yeah, because the lower transaction fees actually causes the market generally to be more efficient, meaning lower slippage.
Yep.
Because the market makers can now capture a bigger spread.
That's right.
Because their cost is lower. But yeah, I love looking at DEX Screener because it tells me a lot about where the market is, where the degens are.
But it also tells you where the hot ball of fire is. And usually the hot ball of fire, and when I say hot ball of fire, is the capital rotation, the capital that goes into the latest memes or narratives, excuse me. It seems like a lot of it is in Solana.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see some like macro changes between like Bitcoin and other majors, but primarily what we're seeing is a lot of strength in Solana and the Solana ecosystem at large. And so that kind of gives you an idea of like, Harry Potter, Obama Sonic 10 Inu, which is another shitcoin on Ethereum. It completely dissipated volume wise, even though I think that the meme is great, but it isn't catching a bid. And that's primarily because that speculative power is in Solana ecosystem.
I did another back of the napkin analysis on the popular meme coins. So including Obama Sonic, Harry Potter, and WIF and Bonk and PayPay, like all these popular on-chain meme coins. And it looks like there's two things I found. One, in general, the turnover on Solana meme coins is higher. By turnover, I mean daily trading volume divided by market cap. So there is a greater number of shares or coins that are being traded on a daily basis because it's cheap to trade.
That's right.
And the second observation I had was the number of holders of Solana meme coins is higher.
Much higher, yeah.
Than the Ethereum-based meme coins. And again, that probably has to do with transaction fees. Because now, with lower transaction fees, the plebs are able to get in.
Yeah, I just saw a tweet today of someone that bought $150 worth of WIF when it first launched. Just a pleb. Now it's worth almost, $2.5-3 million. And so it kind of gives you an idea of the cost to entry has been reduced by an order of magnitude, which enables more and more retail to participate, which ultimately brings on more users to crypto, right?
Yep.
I may have tweeted this earlier on, but I think, which might be contrarian at this point, meme coins will onboard the next wave of crypto users onto crypto.
I mean, and then that's true.
And it's not going to be DeFi. It's not going to be any other products that people may talk about. I think it's going to be purely speculation that's going to be driven through meme coins.
Yeah, I will counter what you said a little bit. Sure. I agree with half of it, but I think speculation is a driver of crypto adoption in a part of the world, not the entire world. That part of the world where speculation really is the driver of adoption is the global north, the rich countries, basically. Speculation is a first world problem. In the global south, I think right now the number one driver of adoption is stablecoins, USDT on Tron, etc. And for those who don't know, USDT Tron is the biggest stablecoin across all chains in terms of volume stored, dollar amount is stored in the stablecoin. So His Excellency Justin Sun really did a great job for onboarding crypto users.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, one, I semi-agree with that thesis. I mean, if you are looking at an individual and all of their net worth is in a hyperinflating currency, the number one, you can't think about speculation, right? You have to think about ways to save that capital or preserve that capital. And then you think about speculation. But I think after talking to a bunch of folks, specifically in South America, it turns out that when they look at Tether as an example, they see there's risks involved, right? And specifically the risks are, and this is the narrative that we've been hearing about for the past 10 years, which is that, whether it's a scam or they're running something that is illegitimate. The law forces or the regulatory, they're probably sacrificing some regulatory burdens that they should be taking into account. And then they look at like Circle, they're like, well, they could work within the US regulatory regime and then they can like stop payments from happening, or it's not censorship resistant, right? As an example. Mm-hmm. So you see Tether as a regulatory concern. You see Circle as a censorship. It's not a censorship resistant stablecoin. But then if you look at Justice Sun, the guy is like breaking laws everywhere, right? His character is also very shadowy. And so when you think about it from that perspective, he's probably more trustworthy in terms of where the currency is going to go versus the other two regimes. And so they probably trust Justin Sun from that perspective because he's not going to rug pull anyone from any perspective. So that's probably one of the drivers, I think, of why Tron is being adopted.
Yeah, we probably talked about this a little bit in the past, but I want to share some numbers again, which is that in 2022, 2 years ago, stablecoins settled $14 trillion on chain, and that dwarfed the dollar amount of volume that PayPal did, and it surpassed the volume of Visa that year as well by a little bit.
You're talking all stablecoins, or just specifically Tron?
All stablecoins.
All stablecoins. Okay.
Yeah, but Tron is like 50% of that. Okay. But the point being, like, we've heard this for 15 years, but people keep saying crypto has not found a killer app beyond speculation, beyond trading. But that's just totally false, because people are now actually using stablecoin as a store of value and also oftentimes as a form of payment, especially in the global south.
Yeah. Do we know exactly what's happening in South America or in Latam?
In what sense?
What is stablecoins being used for? Is it just purely for preserving capital, or are we seeing like increase in velocity of payments over there?
I mean, anecdotally, it's a combination. I think most people use it as a store of value, but you and I have seen some cross-border remittance projects doing really, really well, hockey sticking in Latam.
Yeah. There are a couple of startups that we've talked to that does remittance between Mexico and the US. Within 9 months of launch, they've done probably about $10 to $12 million in volume. Not bad.
But more importantly, they're growing like 10, 20% month over month.
Month over month, yeah. And that's all built on WhatsApp, right? So I think really stablecoins have to be abstracted away in a way that makes it easy for anyone to interact with it. And you're seeing some of this, and we've talked about this previously with Sling. Sling Money is another one. There's Beam and a couple others. So where I think this is going, I think we're going the right direction. And I think what the main way to acquire new users is purely going to be through speed and cost.
Yeah.
And so I think we're very close to where we're supposed to go.
Yeah. Speaking of that, one time I tweeted about the adoption of stablecoins, and someone asked me on Twitter, what is the best way to get exposure to this growth? Back then, I was like, Tron, but I really can't bring myself to do it. TRX, I really can't bring myself to do it, to buy TRX. But last week, Circle announced, or not announced, it was actually a report. Someone broke the news that Circle is confidentially filing for IPO this year. Full disclosure, I'm an early investor in Circle. So I'm really excited about it.
Oh, you're obviously very excited about it.
And it's Circle is the purest form of exposure to the growth of
100%.
stablecoin.
It's good to see it happening, though. I mean, like, if you know Circle's past, they've gone through a lot. They had Poloniex under their belt at one point, if you remember that.
Yes.
And I think that was their primary product, from what I remember.
They acquired Poloniex in 2018 or something. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But they did something funny, which is they shortly after they acquired Poloniex, they removed the troll box.
That was what made the product great.
That's exactly right. And immediately there was a fall off. There's a drop in the number of users and activity on Poloniex. And funny enough, later Poloniex got acquired by Justin, right? Justin acquired Poloniex a few years later.
And then Hobie afterwards.
Yeah. It's now known as HTX.
Somehow Justin finds his way into every narrative in crypto.
Yep.
But yeah, so Circle was started in 2013. That's insanity. That's like, it started off as a Bitcoin wallet. Did you know that?
I didn't know.
Yeah. Then they announced Circle Pay, which is the payments.
Too early for too much ahead of their time.
And this was around the same time where, if you remember BitPay, because they used to do a lot of the payments for crypto, they launched around that same time. And then the Coinbase's e-commerce product launched around that time as well, if you remember. So there was like 3 competing products at the time. And I think people quickly realized that, doing payments in Bitcoin is insanely long. It takes 10 minutes. You can't offer the same security.
And by the time you receive the Bitcoin, the price went down like 50%.
Yeah. And so I could totally see, BitPay's still around, Coinbase's e-commerce product's still around, but there's still nowhere near the same adoption. But that was the first product idea every company came out with. Every startup almost was like, we're going to do payments on crypto. And obviously a lot has changed, and we still haven't seen anything with payments yet with crypto. It's pretty interesting to see that.
Well, with Bitcoin, no, but with stablecoin, we're seeing a lot.
Now we're seeing, right.
Yeah.
But the tipping point has happened after 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Or around 10 years. And so for founders that are listening, timing is also important in the type of idea that you're working on.
Yeah.
Around 2018, Circle launched USDC. And so it took them a while to figure out, and this was just a part of their entire portfolio. You had Poloniex, you had payments, Bitcoin wallet, and then USDC. And they went through a lot, just quickly touching on this, but they have had many near-death experiences, if you remember.
Yep.
But it turns out USDC is probably going to be one of the biggest products since exchanges, I think.
It's the first and the biggest non-speculative PMF in crypto.
What's also interesting is you could consider Circle as a real-world asset, right? They have
Stablecoin is is a real-world asset.
That's right. And the question is now with, I believe it's called CCIP, right?
Yep.
Which offers the ability to message across different chains.
Yes.
You have the ability to mint directly on all the layer ones. The question then becomes, what is the future for Circle after dollar? Recently, we saw the launch of URSC, right? Which is the European stablecoin for euros. And it's starting to get some liquidity on Solana. And I think it's going to slowly grow. But that kind of gives you a hint of where it can go, right? I think if Jeremy does this right, they could be the issuer of all real-world assets moving forward.
Yeah. I've always felt the incumbent has a pretty big advantage there because the startup cost is pretty high for launching an RWA. There's a lot of legal cost, legal licensing, that kind of stuff. The distribution definitely helps. That said, we did see a lot of growth in other RWAs, the non-stablecoin RWAs last year. And I think the trend will probably continue to go this year. So last year, I think around the beginning of the year, MakerDAO started diversifying their treasury into a bunch of real world assets. Like if you look at the names, it's like a bunch of random things like corporate debt and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Not related to crypto at all. Like actually tokenized assets from TradFi.
Majority was T-bills.
It was T-bills, but issued by a number of issuers.
Yeah.
That was really interesting because that was the time when, at least myself, I finally wrapped my head around RWAs. Like before that point, I've been skeptical of the idea of tokenization of securities, real world asset for like 15 years.
Same. And I think a part of it is just the regulatory concerns, right?
Yeah. And also it's like for most crypto purists, it's not interesting. It's intellectually boring. I know how bored you were.
Yeah. Remember when we talked about it? Yeah. In the last pod, we were very bored. I was very bored of it, but that's where the liquidity is concentrated right now.
Yeah. And so with MakerDAO, then we saw the rise of many tokenized US Treasury projects like Ondo, Mountain Protocol, et cetera, et cetera. And they're all doing really well. And it's not surprising because US Treasury essentially offers a very good source of diversification. They offer you essentially 5% yield, and it's for an asset that is essentially backed by 12 aircraft carriers and 3,000 atomic bombs of the United States. And without the smart contract, with much less smart contract security attack surface, right, compared to DeFi.
Yep.
And so it's in hindsight, it's so obvious that it would have taken off. And this led to our whole thesis around RWAs, which is that there's now close to $2 trillion worth of wealth on chain across all crypto assets. And they need sources of diversification, right? Because all the crypto assets, crypto native assets, they're highly correlated with each other. So the crypto natives need diversification. So they would want to buy US treasuries, but later probably also US stocks, real estate, collectibles like watches and Pokemon cards, right?
Yeah.
It's big. It's going to get really big.
And I think as more and more people come on chain, I think the wealth of products will just continue to increase in terms of usage. A couple of things you touched on, which really piqued my interest, and we've had some startups that are part of our program that are working on this, which is like real world assets in the sense of like watches, Pokemon cards, etc. This is a newer phenomena that we're seeing. I mean, we've seen this with a few launches earlier. I think Courtyard was one of the startups that first launched Pokemon cards. Then we had a second startup that recently launched with Magic Eden. But the concept of cards isn't new, though, right? If you think about what Rohan from Dapper Labs did with NBA Top Shot, and primarily there was I think after CryptoKitties was NBA Top Shot, and then after that, then we started to see the speculative mania with like CryptoPunks and all the other NFTs. But those are all flashes in a pan, right? And when I see flashes in a pan, that gives me a signal that says like there's some human behavior that's happening that's probably going to happen for a much longer period of time. And I think NBA Top Shot was that moment for us to think about other types of cards like Magic the Gathering, Pokemon cards, etc. And I think this is a human behavior that's going to be around for a very long time. Did you know that the secondary market for Pokemon for trading cards generally is about $75 billion a year?
I'm not surprised the number is that high.
Yeah.
And I bet half of it is like Pokemon.
Pokemon
is the largest IP in the world.
Yeah. But then you also think about it, like the problem with Pokemon cards today is the fact that the ease of buying a pack of cards is actually, there's high friction, right? You have to walk into the store or you have to order it online, etc. But being able to instantly buying and minting these Pokemon cards on chain could reduce the ability for more and more people to buy cards. So what I'm trying to get at here is that I think there's room for many new Pokemon competitors to enter the space in the trading card space.
From my perspective, as a collector myself, there is an even stronger value proposition for tokenized collectibles.
Yes.
Which is that when you flex, let's say your luxury watches, guess what a lot of people do today? They borrow the watches, they rent it, they lease it, they take a picture, put it on Instagram. And crypto solves that problem.
Yeah, authentication.
Because with crypto, you can prove provenance. You can actually prove that this watch, you own it. So the problem it basically solves is digital native flexing.
And the question is, and I think from a provenance perspective, watches is one. I think NFT, like being a part of tier 1 NFT communities is 2. What other areas do you think flexing could work here? Do you think cars?
The Honda cars or
used? This is not an attribution to used car token on Solana, but it's a good meme though. I like it, especially the Jeff Bezos video of him driving a Honda.
Yeah. Well, I looked at a number of potential collectibles. So like watches, Pokemon cards, but also art, like actual paintings.
Yeah. I think paintings would be big for sure.
Yeah. So wine is also very interesting.
What is wine?
Wine, yeah.
Yeah, wine.
There's some really expensive brands. But what makes watches the most interesting among all these different collectibles is that the overlap between watch collectors and crypto bros is much, much, much higher than all the other categories. I don't know if you've ever seen the price of luxury watches in the last few years.
Is it down only?
Same chart. It's the exact same chart as crypto prices.
Is it really?
Yes.
I think what was his name? One of the Evans S6.
Evan
I think is
SS. Evan
yeah.
SS.
Evan what?
Evan SS.
Evan SS. There you go. He recently tweeted the graph of watches, the prices, and it showed down only. So
Yeah.
maybe
Well,
that's more of a macro trend.
It's lagging crypto prices by a few months. But if you shift it time wise, it's the same chart. So basically, what's happening is crypto bros get rich, they start buying luxury watches.
So it's only crypto bros that's contributing to the prices of watches?
I think it's a big contributor. I'm not sure if
Okay.
there's other contributors, but crypto bros certainly one of the biggest ones.
Okay, so we have watches. We have, I think cars are going to be big too, because people love to like lease and rent cars. So being able to buy a car, I think houses also, could be interesting from a buying selling perspective. The ease of buying and selling.
Yep.
Pokemon cards. There's watches. Those are all. I think I could see all of them coming online.
Yep.
And so, what's the biggest problem that you see here from these startups actually coming online and scaling? To me, one of the biggest problems is, and I think it could be solved pretty easily, at least for watches and cars, is the custody, right?
Yep.
And then for houses, I think it's going to be much harder, primarily because each state, at least in the States I'm talking about, has its own regulatory framework on how buying and selling should happen.
For houses, it depends on what you want, what you tokenize exactly. Do you tokenize the physical properties themselves or the equity attached to it? The latter is easier to do, and we have a startup in the next batch that does that. So back to your point, the custody is a big challenge, but the other challenge is figure out the legal hacks to make this work.
Yeah.
And in some cases, the startup cost is pretty high.
But it is also very exciting. I mean, like the tokenized equity for houses, I think can open up a completely new market for those that want exposure to home equities in the US. You and I always talk about how do we invest in real estate in India and other parts of the world. I think this could be an easier way for us to allocate, as long as there's a strong thesis around how this is being regulated within each country.
So speaking of RWAs, there's a couple of chains that have been doing RWAs recently, or will do RWAs, and I want to talk about them. And the two chains I want to talk about are Polygon and Base. Imran, what do you see in Polygon? Because right now there's a lot of FUD on Twitter. Like it's a very popular thing to do, to hate on Polygon. I'm not sure why exactly.
I don't know. I think people just need to find someone to hate. Someone has to become the enemy, right? And I think Polygon's done a pretty good job of staying close to the latest narrative, but in certain regards, they've been ahead of the narrative as well. And then when the narrative catches up, what people say on crypto is like, oh, these guys are just narrative hoppers, but I don't think so. I think they're just ahead of the game and people are catching up. And, there's a lot of tribalism in crypto, and Polygon probably has one of the strongest communities. And I think people are just trying to break into it, is the way I see it.
Can we share some data on my screen?
Yeah.
I want to share some data that we compiled. All right. So this chart here is a breakdown of all the founders applying to Alliance over the last 3 years, broken down by layer 1s and layer 2s. And the trend is as clear as it gets. Since we're talking about Polygon, I want to point out that Polygon actually has the second largest developer ecosystem in all of crypto. And that's after Ethereum, the layer 1. So Ethereum and Polygon are by far the top two. So that's interesting. I can cover the other ones as well. Solana is interesting because Solana is making a V-shaped recovery since H2 2022. And guess what else happened in H2 2022? The collapse of FTX. Solana bottomed there in terms of developer activity. Bitcoin is making a recovery too. Well, not a recovery. Bitcoin has never had that big of a developer ecosystem, but it's been growing in the last two halves. And a lot of that probably has to do with ordinals and BRC20s, right? And the optimistic rollups, including Optimism and Arbitrum, have been gaining market share as well. And that includes Base. So this is a really telling data set for a few reasons. One, the hate on Polygon is just really unjustified to me. You know, Arthur from Defiance. Arthur from Defiance was he tweeted that Polygon is one of the most undervalued assets in crypto, and I tend to agree because you have that developer activity data from us, in which Polygon is ranked number 2. Polygon recently ranked number 2 or 3 in NFT trading volume, also number 2 or 3 in DEX trading volume. And Polygon has one of the most beefed up teams in ZK in all of crypto. So for those who don't know, Polygon has been building their ZK EVM.
Yep.
And also the Polygon CDK, which is basically an SDK for developers to launch their own rollup using the ZK EVM technology. So you can think of Polygon CDK as something analogous to the OP stack.
Yep.
Right.
Superchain. What couple points I want to touch on is Polygon CDK actually has a lot of progress that people aren't talking about, or even if it's being talked about, people are undermining the impact of this, what this really enables. You have Immutable X that launched on its CDK. You have Gnosis Pay. You have Kanto, Avagachi, and a couple other tier 1 companies' products. So that kind of gives you an idea of what it can enable. To me, it seems like everyone just bought a bunch of OP because of Base, and they're just long OP.
Yep.
But sure, Base is building on Optimism. Great. But how much did Optimism pay Base to stay on the superchain, right? Within the superchain infrastructure. It turns out they paid a lot of tokens in perpetuity so that Base
Really?
can continue. Yeah.
Polygon pays Base?
No. Optimism is paying Base to stay within the Base.
Right. Yeah. This is public?
This is public. It was voted.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. And so like the question then becomes, what happens after that agreement is up? What will Base do? I mean, Base is pretty big on its own in terms of narrative.
Yeah.
Could they just spin out and just become their own super chain and then have startups build their own mini chains, right? So the way I see this today is that for now, the great narrative is great. But the question is, like, will the network effects of what super chain Optimism bring will be strong enough for Base to continue staying within that framework?
Yeah.
Or will Base look at it and say, like, well, we're not really gaining anything out of Optimism and its ecosystem.
Yeah.
So we're better off spinning out, forking Optimism, and then creating ways for founders that are building on Base to roll up or create mini roll-ups as a way to create value for Base in the long run. To me, it's everyone's going to eat each other's share. That's what's going to end up happening. Everything's going to get commoditized. Everyone's going to eat share. Yeah. And I do think Base is going to spin out and do their own thing.
Yeah, people say the layer 2s are all Ethereum. We're a big Ethereum family. In practice, it's not.
It's not.
In practice, they're all, I'll just put it bluntly, they're all parasitic to Ethereum layer 1, and they're all competing with each other as well. You see the founders, debating each other on Twitter all the time between the various layer 2s. They're all in competition. Back to Base. I've tweeted about Base recently and quite a few times, but I am very bullish Base. Yeah. I think Base is actually the most interesting layer 2 from a non-tech point of view. The reason for that is Coinbase has 140 million KYC users, something along those lines. And Coinbase can decide to port the KYC information in one way or another to their Base chain. And all of a sudden, you have many real identity addresses on the Base chain. So essentially, Coinbase is this identity layer for the Base chain. And I don't believe any other chain can easily do this. They would have to use something like Clique, which is, by the way, one of Alliance companies that allow the users port their off-chain identity credentials to on-chain. But Base has this baked in, essentially. And so as a result, they can do very interesting things like RWAs, because RWAs require quite a bit of KYC, AML, that kind of stuff.
So just touching on Base, Optimism paid Base 118 million OP tokens over 6 years.
Not that bad. It's
not that bad.
Yeah.
Huh?
The grand scheme of things, it's not that bad.
Well, I mean, based on where the pricing is.
Yeah.
Right. Price
OP
can
is
go.
$4 now, so it's like 6 million over 6 years, 1 million per year.
No. It's 472 million, 118 million.
Oh,
So this could easily hit $1 billion, is what I'm saying.
wow.
But in return, Base said that it'll contribute 2.5% of its sequencer revenue or of its net profits to Optimism Collective. So
Crazy.
yeah,
Crazy deal.
I don't know. To me, it seems like it's more of a one-sided deal. But we'll see where the numbers.
After 6 years, you're locked in. I feel like if Base is going to succeed 6 years from now, it's hard to say. I don't know. I don't have any insider insight or information, but
yeah,
it's a lot of money.
To me, it's a lot of money. So to me, it seems a bit more one-sided, but we'll see where it goes. But I could definitely see Base becoming its own super chain.
I want to talk a little bit about Arbitrum.
Oh wait, for Base, so you mentioned a couple things, which is 140 million KYC users. There's another impact to this, right? Which is founders want access to those 140 million KYC users. And specifically, you could think about RWAs, because RWAs, in order for you to purchase RWAs, at least today, you have to be KYC'd.
That's right.
So for Ondo, they have to do a complete different KYC onboarding just so that you could buy T-bills.
Right.
But in this case, Coinbase could essentially offer first-party products. It could offer things like Ondo directly to its users in the Coinbase wallet app without having to go through the entire process. So they could become the gatekeepers for RWAs as well, at least for that 140 million users.
The other project that just came to mind is FriendTech, because FriendTech is built on Base. We should talk about it. We should talk about it in a bit because it's a very interesting topic. I just want to mention before I forget, but I want to talk about Arbitrum because we're still in this competitive landscape of layer twos. Arbitrum, again, by many objective measures, is the most important layer two rollup right now.
From a technical perspective, it's probably one of the most premier rollups.
Yes. So both technical and they have 2 times the amount of TVL as the second biggest rollup, which is Optimism. So they're leading there. And by the way, some people ask, if there is a cultural difference between Optimism and Arbitrum and other rollups. I think from my point of view, essentially Arbitrum has been targeting crypto native builders and Optimism has been targeting the West Coast elite. That's
Silicon Valley elite.
The Silicon Valley elite. That's what I've seen anecdotally from my point of view. But anyway, Arbitrum, because they've reeled in all the crypto native builders, many of whom are DeFi builders, Polygon naturally has a lot of activity in DeFi. And on a technical point of view, we're going to talk about 4844 because 4844 is this upcoming upgrade on Ethereum.
Proto-Dank sharding, right?
Proto-Dank sharding. It's going to affect all the Ethereum layer 2s. However, I haven't seen any good public discussion of how much exactly 4844 is going to reduce in terms of fees, transaction fees for the layer 2s. But I did talk to some folks who are very close to Arbitrum and the 4842 EIP or 4844 EIP. And if I triangulate the different answers, I think the impact of 4844 on the transaction fees is less than 50%, meaning the transaction fees will go down by maybe a factor of 2 max. I've heard some numbers on the order of 10-20%, meaning the fees will go from, let's say, 100% to 80 to 90%, if that makes sense. So based on what I've learned so far, 4844 isn't actually a very big upgrade when it comes to transaction fees on layer 2s. However, on Arbitrum, there's this thing called Arbitrum Stylus.
Oh, yeah.
Arbitrum Stylus is likely, hopefully, going to prod later this year, maybe Q2, Q3. I mean, the timeline is always uncertain, but it's possible that Arbitrum Stylus upgrade will improve computation and memory efficiency by a factor of 10 to 100 for some applications, which means the transaction fees could go down by an order of magnitude or 2 for some applications. So that is a really big one. And if that happens, the throughput between Arbitrum and Solana, for example, right now Solana is ballpark 2 orders of magnitude ahead of the fastest layer 2s. If Arbitrum stylus happens, you can bring the throughput and fees within possibly a 1 order of magnitude as Solana. So that is really exciting for Arbitrum.
So a couple of things. I did a quick Grok search on Twitter to talk about like what were the numbers discussed around prudent sharding and what are the roll-up cost savings. There's some numbers I can throw out. Starknet, as an example, could go from $6 a transaction to 12 cents. And then they also, and this is just what Grok says. I don't know how much of this is true or not.
Mm-hmm.
And then 12 cents for Arbitrum on average.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in line with what you're saying, more or less.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I think they're all essentially racing to the bottom. Solana is so much ahead of everyone else right now. And the Ethereum layer 2s need to improve.
And Vitalik just announced recently also that, I forgot what the gas update is, but there's a gas update that you could do that Ethereum reviews every year, 2 years.
As far as I remember, it's a slight increase in gas, max gas. I think it was 30% increase or something.
Yeah.
And that's to taking into account the Moore's law, every 2 years.
What I wanted to talk about is, while we're talking about layer 2s, right? What's happening is like Ethereum is losing its narrative, right?
Yes.
From every aspect that you could think about. So the first aspect is layer 2s, right? Being able to use layer 2s as a way to execute transactions, as an example. So execution. Then if you think about the data availability layer or the data layer, people said like, well, you can now store on Ethereum. It'll be cheaper, but then there's still costs. And so you have Celestia and EigenLayer that is taking away that narrative, right? So that's 2. And then the third one is just like speculation, right? Because of all of the costs that are being divvied out to the users. So because of the cost, all the users are then going to like other places like Solana. And while that's there, then all the speculative ball of fire continue to grow progressively, and a lot of new startups are building for that ecosystem versus Ethereum because it's lost that speculative ball of fire. Now the question is like, should Ethereum become more aggressive in enshrining a lot of the things that was given out to the community members to build to help scale Ethereum? And so proof-of-stake sharding is, I see this as, potentially competitive to, let's say, Celestia and other DA layers. And so the question is, should Ethereum enshrine more and start to build its own narrative and start to become more aggressive in the space? Or should it continue on the same path as it has been and allow the community to build out and solve the problems for Ethereum and commercialize it? Because that's essentially what's happening, is commercializing this, which then creates fragmentation in the ecosystem. And I think that's the counter to what Solana is doing, right? Solana is like, no, don't commercialize anything. We're going to build everything and embed it, and we're going to make it easier for builders to come in and build on our platform.
Yep. I mean, essentially, Ethereum is taking a more decentralized approach to protocol development than Solana. I mean, there's pros and cons. I really don't know what's better.
Yeah.
But if you had to put a gun to my head, and this is going to piss off a lot of Ethereum maxis, I think 5 years from now, I would not be surprised. I'm not predicting it, but I would not be surprised that Solana, number one, reaches the same market cap as Ethereum. I'm not predicting a very imminent flippening, not at all, not 2 years, but maybe 5 years. I would not be surprised if that happens. And 2, if Solana reaches the same market cap as Ethereum, probably it'll be because there's more developers building on Solana and more projects and more TVL, more trading volume than on Ethereum, including the layer 2s. I would not be surprised if that happens, because we noted this in the previous episode, but the Solana protocol development team culture is very engineering driven.
Yeah.
And Ethereum is very research driven. I just feel like the engineering, the pragmatic mind will ultimately prevail.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with that. Me personally, I think Ethereum needs to become much more aggressive and should start enshrining some more of the aspects that could make it more valuable.
It's war mode now. Like Ethereum,
it's too late now, but they should go war mode.
It's war mode. Like Ethereum no longer has the first mover advantage that it used to have 2 years ago.
That's right. So that's where we at. So I've talked to a lot of Solana builders, and what I'm hearing is they are starting to get congestion. Users are starting to, the price fees are becoming a little bit more expensive. I mean, Compared to Ethereum, okay, of course not. But they're starting to see signals of this.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, I know Anatoly is very hard-minded in the sense that he thinks monolithic or nothing. But some of these builders are thinking about roll-ups on Solana.
Yeah.
They're thinking about roll-ups on Solana. And one of them is top 5 product on Solana.
Mm-hmm.
And they're already thinking about roll-ups as a way to offload some of the execution necessary so that users will not have to, they don't have to worry about what's happening. Like they don't have to worry about like hotspots of other products taking up share, right? Of gas fees and validators, right? And so there is an aspect that founders are thinking about. And so they're already starting to think about going roll up.
Yeah. And by the way, this, what you mentioned right there is why I think that the whole monolithic versus modular architecture thing debate is a false dichotomy.
Yeah.
Because every chain actually started off as a monolithic chain. Ethereum, 5 years ago, it was a monolithic chain. The fact that there's a bunch of roll-ups right now is more of a symptom that the layer 1 cannot scale. And by the same token, Solana will be able to launch roll-ups if they wanted to. Because launching a roll-up is essentially a set of smart contracts. It's permissionless. Anyone can do a roll-up on Solana. So if Solana gets congested, I have no idea if that'll happen. By the way, I feel like everyone is hoping for the bear market to continue because when the bull market returns, every chain
It's over.
It's over. So I feel like the Solana people are hoping for Fire Dancer to come in sooner rather than later, solve this potential crisis. But yeah, point being, Solana can do roll-ups if they wanted to.
So it could be that, if you look at, here's a great example. I can give you a price action of Bitcoin from 2013, right? And really, if you enlarge back to all the way up to 2023, it's a very small spectrum where we are when it comes to like the modular and the monolithic like fighting, meaning that maybe every chain is going to become modular.
Yep.
And that is the world that we're all headed towards. And maybe Ethereum is ahead from that perspective.
Do you see any real traction on Celestia? Or is it mostly degen hype right now?
Their narrative is much further along from where the product development is. And that's primarily because Celestia stakers are getting tokens from new projects that gives them, it's essentially like risk-free reward, right? And they're comparing this to some narratives I've seen is comparing it to the 3-3 movement by Ohm. And, whenever you're compared against 3-3, you have to take a pause and kind of dive deeper to see what's happening. I don't know enough within the Celestia ecosystem.
Yeah. I think Manta, the rollup, launched their rollup on Celestia, right? Using Celestia as DA layer, right?
Yeah, everyone is launching on Celestia and Eigenlayer. But in terms of how much, I saw one of Nick White, the co-founder's tweets, and I think he talked about there was a pretty big savings that was it Nick? There, yeah. I'll get the savings in a bit here.
By the way, I can see Grok becoming the most important tool for crypto investors and traders and builders, let's say a year from now, surpassing ChatGPT. There's so much information, real-time information on Twitter that Grok is able to digest.
It's great. It's good. I mean, you obviously have to I would probably take Grok at 50% of face value.
Yeah, it's probably hallucinating a lot, but it'll get better for sure.
Yeah. So Grok has surpassed 1 gigabyte of data posted. 99% of reduction in data costs is the numbers that I've gotten. Here we are. One day we'll be doing 1 gigabyte of data every minute. So yeah, I think that's true. So as long as we're consuming data, they need a place to store data. And that will accelerate. And so, yeah, but I do think that the narrative is definitely ahead of where its actual utility is. Yeah, 100%.
I have no idea where everything's going between modular versus monolithic, between the competition between the various layer 2s, whether or not a separate DA layer will become a real thing. It's really complicated because everyone is improving. Everyone is racing to the bottom to provide lower latency and higher throughput and lower fees for the end user.
And they're cannibalizing each other. I mean, if you think about it, Celestia also offers rollups, right?
Celestia is directly competitive to Ethereum.
That's right. And so, and people argue no, but
the
I think
more
it's
you
cool.
offload off of Ethereum, the more competitive you are to Ethereum. It's 100% true.
Yeah. Because
And
when you
so
offload the data to Celestia, to a separate DA layer in general, you are sacrificing the security of Ethereum layer 1. That's why it's called a Validium. Actually, there was a debate recently between the Bankless guys and the developer that created proto-dank sharding. There was a debate around the definition of a rollup. But essentially,
yeah.
remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. But essentially, if you offload the data to a separate DA layer, you are called a Validium rather than a rollup. And the reason why definition in this case is so important is because of whether or not you're truly relying on the security assumption of the Ethereum layer 1.
We need to do a deep dive on Celestia. So maybe we can invite Nick and team to discuss what's happening there.
But to summarize, again, like we don't know where it's going, but if the trend continues, this year probably Solana will do well. Optimistic rollups will probably do well, including Arbitrum and Optimism. And we'll see where Celestia and Eigenlayer and the other ZK rollups are doing. The ZK rollups are currently much smaller than the optimistic rollups.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, optimistic rollups are still getting traction. And I think there's a lot of problems. I would say problems, but there are hurdles with ZK VMs, right? Like proving, the cost of proving, storing, etc. So I think that will go down in order of magnitude as we get more and more users, and there's back end costs as well. But yeah, I mean, I think over time the narrative will switch to ZK VMs, but it'll take time. Okay, so that is interesting from looking in the layer twos and kind of the modular thesis. Moving away from this, I've been spending a lot of time within the Bitcoin ecosystem, and this might be counter to what everyone is doing today. But I do think it's worth a look because there is actual organic demand. And let's talk through like some of the things that I've noticed. Yep. So I wanted to bridge money. One, I want to do this from a decentralized factor because I never want to use exchanges or anything else to switch money from different chains. So I use for me, it's just like testing the entire decentralized thesis. Like,
okay, got it.
Can I send money from one chain to another? And so I did. I used ThorSwap to switch from Ethereum to Bitcoin. It was painful. And
like going back to dial-up. How long did you have to wait?
Yeah, so I used ThorSwap. It took about an hour to transfer X amount of Ethereum to Bitcoin, to the Bitcoin chain. And after I waited about an hour, I finally got it. I used the Xverse app. And once I received the Bitcoin, I then went to Magic Eden. And then I looked through some of the things I could buy. And
were you on mobile or desktop?
I did both. I tested both.
Okay.
Both work really well. Really well. And so I ended up buying a couple Node Monkeys, which I think is probably the first blue chip on Bitcoin. And I could see, the wealth effect on the wealth accumulated on Bitcoin is just insanity compared to any other chain that's out there. And typically it's hard to chase BTC beta, right? Within the BTC ecosystem. And so you have like Ordi and like others, Ordinals, Ordi, there's a couple other like shitcoins, BRC20s that I'll talk a bit about. But I think NFTs is a great way to get BTC beta. And I could totally see if there's a blue chip like Node Monkeys that the miners, all the OGs in East Asia will end up buying them. And that's kind of like that's my thesis around Node Monkeys.
You think Node Monkeys will flip in punks?
I think it will. It'll take time. I threw out something funny like a year, but I don't know if it's going to happen within a year. But once miners and others see this as a store of value and a beta against BTC, they'll buy it.
Yeah.
But we need to see one pump.
Why not, right? There's more wealth on Bitcoin than on Ethereum by definition. So why wouldn't that wealth pump the blue chip NFT?
That's right. I will say though, buying BRC20 tokens is probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life in crypto. Even harder than buying shitcoins on Ether Delta back in 2013.
Oh my God.
And that was hard. It was hard, right?
Which app do you use for BRC20s?
I used Unisat or Unisat wallet.
Yeah.
And, you know, BRC20s are essentially you're buying a block of, it's like an inscription that has a block of tokens that you could buy. So it isn't like an AMM where you can buy whatever tokens that you want. Let's say I wanted to buy 50,000 Uniswap tokens. You know, I can't just put a number in and buy the tokens. It's essentially kind of like an RFQ system, right? And people put up their bid or how much they're willing to sell of their BRC20 tokens that they hold. And then you just buy that block and that's it. Kind of like an OTC / RFQ system.
Yep.
It was very hard. And at least I did this all decentralized. But I will say though, like if they can fix this process, I could see BRC20 tokens doing really well as well. Just chasing.
You're fundamentally limited by the block time of Bitcoin, right? Like I don't know how many confirmations they require to consider a transaction to be fully settled, but no matter what, it's much longer than Ethereum. If
this is built on the inscriptions, which it is, it's much faster in terms of execution. So I've purchased Bitcoin or Node Monkeys, and I received it in my wallet within a minute or two.
Yeah.
But the transaction, obviously it takes time. But in terms of me receiving after the transaction executed, I received it pretty quickly.
I feel like ordinals will last longer than the quote unquote fungible tokens. NFTs will basically last longer than fungible tokens.
Yeah, I don't know. Fungible tokens are just harder to buy.
Well, there's that, but also for fungible tokens to really thrive, you need a pretty vibrant DeFi, or like you need a pretty expressive smart contract language. Because otherwise, all it is a fungible token. Like you cannot do anything with it.
Yeah,
it's not a governance token for DeFi protocol. It's not a token incentive for DPIM. It doesn't do anything. But the NFTs, or known as ordinals on Bitcoin, they have a JPEG that you can flex on Twitter, right? And those JPEG NFTs, actually, we wrote about this in our 2024 startup ideas. But basically what we said was, we think that the 10K PFPs in general, not just on Bitcoin, in general, will probably continue to be the most important category of NFTs. Because you don't need to do anything for it. So think about music NFTs or gaming NFTs and others. The existing distribution channels aren't there already. Like for example, with music NFTs, you would need Spotify or Apple Music to support it, unless you build your own music NFT trading platform. But that really takes time. Same story with gaming NFTs. You need the big games to adopt it, unless you build your own game, but that takes time. But with PFPs, Twitter is already there. You can use Twitter profile pic to flex your NFT. All the big distribution channels are there. Nothing needs to be done for you to do what you want to do.
They're just memes. Yeah. Every NFT community is a meme. Every meme coin is a meme. And it's all the same pie. Like I messaged the dogwifhat handle. I said, hey, you guys should start selling branded hats, because I would buy a branded hat. And I think many people would buy a branded hat.
Yeah.
And you could turn that into a lifestyle brand. Why not?
Yeah.
Like,
it's a brilliant idea. It's like Pudgy Penguins doing their in real life penguins.
All of this is a lifestyle brand. This is all general consumer. It's a lifestyle brand. Sell it as such. And you know, like you could see this with Chobani, right? Chobani bought yogurts. They used to sell yogurts. Mm-hmm. Now they have coffee shops in New York all over, and they're Chobani coffee. I mean, it's really a brand, and you have to build a wedge into a brand, right? So Pudgy Penguins is a great example. I mean, it just almost hit 16 ETH. Yeah. From yesterday, which was at a 12 ETH. And I'll give you that. This is a perfect example. Pudgy Penguins has a general appeal. Everyone loves it. My kids love it. Anyone I share with say it's cute. I recently went to Malaysia and you know, I visited family there. And my family has no idea about crypto at all. They sent me as soon as I landed, they sent me a GIF. And it was a Pudgy Penguins welcome to Malaysia GIF. And I asked them, like, do you know what this is? They're like, no, it's just really cute. I'm like, huh. Interesting. Yeah. So it's bleeding into the cultural aspects of different countries, right? It has nothing to do with NFTs. It's just building its brand value because of the appeal of the content in itself.
Imran, I told you about this, but Pudgy Penguins are the only NFT collection that ever appealed to me aesthetically in all of NFT collections. The only one that I actually liked for the art rather than for the money.
Yes. But there's also a graph that's out there, or a meme that's out there, and it shows Pudgy Penguin at 0.01 ETH and it says ugly as AF. 5, it kind of looks good. 10, oh my God, that's really good. 30 ETH is like, I fucking love it. And that's probably
the technology of Pudgy Penguins improved dramatically overnight.
Yeah. Just getting back to my main point with NFTs, generally speaking, they have the ability, and meme coins too, they have the ability to become a lifestyle brand and consumer brand, and they can go into many different aspects of consumer behavior. I'll give you another example. So there's a big battle that's happening with traditional brands and the brands that are building around the TikTok and Instagram ecosystem. It turns out a lot of the new lifestyle brands that are being built for these ecosystems, TikTok and Instagram. I'll give you one concrete example that I just learned about. There's a company called Stanley. Have you heard of Stanley? Okay. Apparently it's the biggest thing in the world right now. Stanley cups are water cups. So everyone in high school buys a Stanley cup to drink water out of. It's like the new thing. People wait in line to buy Stanley cups. Like there's a line out of the store and people want to buy these cups. It's a fucking cup. Right? I mean, it's nothing else. It's just a cup. But what they did differently was that they marketed to influencers on TikTok and people and really well-known people on TikTok. They sold this brand to the consumers, and now it's like one of the hottest brands that are out there. And so they've kind of built out their own market based on the virality of social media. The question is, where could it go next? I think it could be meme coins and NFTs, right? If you build a strong enough community, which is attention, then you could start selling products. And that's like one way of doing it.
Like Pudgy World with Pudgy Penguins, right? That kind of stuff.
And then, yeah, or like Anita Max Win, which is... if you guys don't know, Anita Max Win is a new shitcoin that launched on Solana. It's based on the alter ego of Drake. And if you read between the lines, I need a Max Win. So they just launched a merchandise store, I think to sell like t-shirts or whatever. So really? I think it's going in the right direction. Oh. But there isn't anyone that's really like taken the meme coin has made it into a lifestyle brand, but they should.
Yeah.
So that was BRC20, Node Monkeys. I think we touched on that. We've touched a bit on meme coins and we talked about Pudgy Penguins. Anything else?
Oh, we've seen, by the way, a lot of Bitcoin Layer 2 projects.
Yes.
I don't know enough about it to give you anything interesting that you haven't heard, but it seems to me that most Layer 2, a true Layer 2 requires a soft fork in the Bitcoin Layer 1 protocol. And even what we know about what happened in 2017, 2018, the SegWit drama, it's a very tough undertaking because Bitcoin is too decentralized. No one is in charge. Who's there to say, hey, we need to do a soft fork to enable this? So Bitcoin Layer 2 is not in plain sight, but it's interesting still.
Yeah, I wonder if, Stacks is considered a Layer 2, right?
Yeah. Layer 2 is it's not a roll-up. The relationship between Stacks and Bitcoin is not the same as Arbitrum and Ethereum.
Yeah, it's not clear to me. Sometimes I feel like it's competing. Sometimes I feel like it's not.
By the way, Stacks is essentially using Bitcoin Layer 1 as DA layer rather than consensus, if that makes sense. Remember that the 3 or 4 functions of a blockchain, right? Execution, consensus, data availability. Stacks is essentially using Bitcoin as data availability, but they do their own consensus.
And by staking Stacks, you receive Bitcoin in kind. So this is like a way to show more of a shared relationship versus a competitive or extractive relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, but smart contract language is different. Building the ecosystem is a little bit different. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. I wanted to touch on recently, like today, it was I think earlier today, Electric Capital just released their report and some interesting insights that I've seen. We just talked about this, but this is the thing. Top 15 ecosystems where the new devs are joining since 2023. First one is Ethereum. Second one is Polygon. Third is Other. Fourth is Solana. Fifth is BNB. Sixth is Cosmos. Seventh is Arbitrum.
It's pretty much in line with what we have, except for BNB, because we don't see BNB projects because the BNB projects go directly to Binance. I think that's the only major disagreement.
That's
So
right.
Polygon being number 2, Ethereum being number 1, Solana being number 3, aside from the others. That's in line with what we have.
Yep. It also talked about developers with more than 2 years of experience in crypto are at an all-time high after reaching 51% annualized growth over the past 5 years. And developers who've been in crypto for at least 1 year grew 15% year over year, comprised 63% of all monthly active developers.
Is the total number up or down last year?
It says coming soon. So I think some news reporters got it beforehand. Here we are. Monthly active developers down. It's the peak was 2022, obviously, August, let's say November 24, 2022. It was at 33,709 developers. And now, as of December 31st, it's 22,411.
So it went down by 30%. Bear market.
Bear market things. Monthly active developers. Oh, by developer type. So full-time, part-time, and one-time. Sorry, let's look at full-time. Full-time, 9,000 to 6,800. Yeah, everything's trending down. Everything. Top ecosystems monthly active reports, developers. Ethereum 5% increase over a 2-year span. I don't know how Polkadot is still up there as number 2.
Wait, Polkadot is number 2?
Yeah. They have 2,100 total developers, while Ethereum has 7,800. Polygon 2,800, Cosmos 2,000, 1,800, etc.
Doesn't seem right. I don't see any activity on Polkadot.
It might be just Polkadot just hiring everyone. Just kidding.
Yeah. Should we talk about the ETF? Because it's...
Yeah, let's talk about ETF. What are we excited about? I think there is a lot to be excited about. Bitcoin ETF was just launched. Everyone is worried about the mass selling from Grayscale. You know, I don't understand, why didn't Grayscale just reduce their fees? And like they could have kept the capital. Like I don't understand why they didn't. I mean, 1.5 is a lot. So now there's mass hysteria because everyone's worried about the redemption of GBTC.
Yeah. I don't know. Crypto Tutor is always worried about these short-term things. Like remember when Solana was trading below $20 and everyone was scared of the down page from FTX.
Yeah.
And,
when it Pico bottomed to 8.
Yeah. I don't care about these short-term things. But I think Ethereum ETF, if approved, could change a lot of things. So without the ETF, I think that Ethereum in the coming years will be endlessly compared to Solana because people will put in the same category as Solana as a smart contract platform. And they'll be competing on fees, on latency, on throughput, on security, on liquidity. Some of which Ethereum is winning, others Ethereum is behind. But if the Ethereum ETF is approved in May, I think people will start putting Ethereum in the same category as BTC, meaning the category of an institutional ready asset class.
For now.
For now.
These narratives.
But the narratives change how people value the asset. Because without the ETF, if Ethereum is in the same category as Solana, the market will compete against Solana. But if Ethereum is in the same category as BTC, the market will compete against BTC. So remember Santiago tweeted about Sol ETH flipping this cycle? I think that was a little bit over aggressive. My timeline back then was maybe 5 years. It would take 5 years for Ethereum or for Solana to catch up to Ethereum market cap wise. Now that I think of it, I think the ETF, the ETH ETF, will change that narrative. If ETH gets the ETF, it'll be much harder for Solana to catch up to Ethereum market cap wise.
Agreed.
And my prediction for the ETH ETF is it'll get approved because you don't want to bet against Sir Larry Fink, the guy who applied for ETFs 300 times and only got denied once. So you don't want to bet
hit rates
that.
Impeccable.
That's right.
But we got to take a step back and appreciate where we are. I mean, 10 years ago when I first joined crypto, the thesis was the goal was an ETF, if you remember.
Yeah.
And we're finally here. Like insanity.
If you told me 10 years ago that Fidelity and BlackRock would market BTC on their homepage, I would have said, you're crazy. You're nuts. But it just happened.
It just happened. So we came a long way, but I still think we're so early. I don't know why I keep thinking that. We're still so early.
I mean, Coinbase only has 140 million users. In the grand scheme of things, that's like 5%. Or sorry, no, that's more like 2% of the entire human race.
We don't have a major consumer app that everyone uses every day that's crypto on crypto rails. FriendTech had a shot, and maybe we could talk about FriendTech a bit, which I'm really excited about SocialFi. I'm still very bullish. I'm still bullish. Look, FriendTech, they messed up in so many ways. And primarily, I think the way they messed up was the lack of communication to their users, the people that are risking their capital to use the platform, right? You should never burn your users, because if you burn your users either through a hack or through bad business dealings, you're going to lose those customers forever unless you give them enough wealth where they're willing to take that risk again, right?
When I first used FriendTech, I noticed that Racer never talks to his users in his own chat group.
Yeah.
If you compare that to Farcaster, Dan Romero talks to the users all the time, all day, every day. He's very active on his own social platform.
That's right. It tells you a lot about how you value your users, right? And you have to understand the importance of what the customers are putting at stake, because there's so many different areas of attention that a user can put their mind into, right? Like you have Memecoins, you have NFTs. So getting even some sort of attention on your app is a very big win. And so I do think Racer has done a poor job of keeping his users happy. Now, I will counter this also by saying that he didn't expect, I obviously had one of his keys, so I've been keeping up to date with his thoughts, because I do think SocialFi is going to be a very big sector in crypto. And I still think FriendTech has a shot. And the reason why I say that is because people still have accumulated a lot of points. And all it takes is a token to turn that frown to a happiness. And so I do think FriendTech has a shot still, but that shot is getting reduced day by day. And so I'll put that to the side and say that Racer did not expect his app to go viral at all. So he was caught off guard and he didn't know how to handle it. And two, I think the app in itself, the first version, had a lot of flaws. And the flaws are like the bonding curve. I think bonding curve is interesting, but it is an anti-network effect, right? Like you can only buy so many keys. And then after that, everyone just gets priced up. It's just very hard to do that. The value of what FriendTech can provide is similar or in line with what the value is of Twitter and Telegram. So some of the keys that I purchased, the creator said, hey, here's my Telegram group. It's just easier to talk here. Let's just chat here, right? So one is the bonding curve. Two is the messaging isn't interesting enough. And I'd say three is the incentives weren't very clear forward as far as why someone should use it from a user's perspective. Now, what should a SocialFi app look like? I think you and I have chatted a lot about this in detail. But to me, in crypto, I think the idea of being able to trade personal token assets is still very big. I remember during the hype cycle of FriendTech, people wanted to know who were the undercover or lower follower count Twitter gems that have a lot of alpha or value. And so they started buying up all of these like tokens or keys of these users. And so I'm just going back to speculation. People want to speculate on people. And I think that's still going to become very important. Yep. I don't think chat is a way to differentiate. Like offering chat is not going to give you anything of value. You can't predicate your product on chat.
The chat is a distraction, actually. The token is what makes it interesting. It's a whole new asset class, and people want to gamble on people. It's so obvious that behavior.
So going back recently, Racer also tweeted or messaged in the chat, and he said, "What if we allowed people to launch their own tradable assets onto FriendTech?" So an example of this is I have an account with FriendTech. I have a bunch of users, and I could launch my own NFT collection or a token or a key, whatever you want to call it, to my users, and they can buy it. What are your thoughts on that? And people responded positively. And so I think there's something that's happening there. I don't know exactly what he's working on, but something is happening where I think the idea is going to pivot to being more of a launch pad for tradable assets.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
Because, I mean, everything at the end of the day is a meme coin. I don't care what you say, but everything is a meme coin. And that includes the personal tokens. That includes the dogwifhat. That includes BTC. BTC for me is a meme coin. Most other coins in the top 100 are meme coins.
they don't have any value accrual mechanism right now.
Bitcoin's a meme. It's gold.
Exactly. Bitcoin is a meme for the boomers. Ethereum arguably is no longer a meme coin because there's a yield now. But for the first 6 years, it was a meme coin.
It's like an on-chain bond, right?
Yeah, the internet bond, as they call it. I hate that shit, but
so boomer. But people like it.
But yeah, everything is a meme coin. Everything is a meme. And
It's
the sooner you realize this, I'm not saying this is the right way to look at things, but it's a helpful way to look at things. And if you view things through this lens, I think a lot of things, a lot of valuation, etc., will make sense to you.
What you just said reminded me of a meme of the spaceman looking at the Earth, and there's another spaceman behind him with a gun. Is it all a meme?
Yeah,
it always has been.
Yes.
The whole world is a meme. So I think SocialFi is going to be big, and everyone's, I think, waiting for FriendTech to do their next move,
right? Because
the current product, everyone that did all the copy pasta, so there's like Chat3 and other apps that have copied FriendTech. They're like, I'm using those apps still, and nothing's really happening there. And to me, I think FriendTech is going to launch V2 very soon. I think it's going to be in February or March, and that's going to kind of like spark what's going to happen with SocialFi, I believe. So it's really on Racer because no one else has a clue of what the fuck to do. But there was another startup called BPET that launched, and the token went up to $750 million in FDV within a couple days, which is a SocialFi app. So people want to speculate on SocialFi. There's the narrative is there, and all Racer has to do is launch the token.
Yep.
And then I think everything can come back, turn back on. So I'm optimistic on FriendTech. Obviously, you do your own diligence. I'm staying semi-active. I have a bunch of in-on accounts that I'm using, and so I'm still staying active. So I think SocialFi will be big this year. I think, as I mentioned earlier, BRC20 and Bitcoin inscriptions will continue to stay big. And then thesis is when you and I chatted about, when you asked me, like why would you buy stuff on Bitcoin? I'm like, well, I feel more comfortable buying Bitcoin inscriptions because
it's built on digital gold.
It's like digital gold. Like there's a luxury aspect to buying something on Bitcoin, and then you named it a luxury chain, which is exactly right. It is why East Asians and I believe South Asians will like about Bitcoin, because in South Asia, India specifically, everything is gold. Everything we buy is gold. This is how we share value. This is everything we do. So Bitcoin will be the natural extension of this behavior. And if that's true, then inscriptions is a perfect gateway drug for Indians to buy stuff, because it's gold, right?
Yeah.
And that's the way they'll think about this.
Agreed.
So Bitcoin will become the luxury chain is the idea here.
Any other NFTs? Monkeys, penguins, what else? Mad Lads.
Mad Lads. So the trifecta is Pudgy Penguins, Node Monkeys on Bitcoin, and
Mad Lads on Solana.
And I'll also throw in Tensorians. I think they're going to be like second to Mad Lads in terms of blue chip status.
Yeah. And WIF?
I'm so bullish WIF. We're both wearing hats, so obviously.
Not financial advice, by the way.
Not financial advice. This is just Qiao and I talking. But I know I'm going to make all the bonk people pissed, but I think it's going to flip bonk.
Yeah. The real flipping this cycle is WIF and bonk. And maybe penguins and punks. Penguins flipping
Bored Apes.
Bored Apes is programmed.
It's almost done. I mean, like what did I tell you the price was?
You went up to 40,000.
Yeah. It's about to hit 16 now. And when I told you about it yesterday, it was at 12 ETH.
Yeah. Less than 30% to go. It's programmed.
It's programmed. It's imminent. I do think Node Monkeys will surpass punks or will be at par.
Bold prediction.
Yeah, people will not like this prediction. But if you just look at the wealth that's concentrated in Bitcoin, it's easier to make that distinction, right? But from an outside perspective, probably not.
I have a couple predictions.
Yeah, please. I'd love to hear your prediction.
So at some point in December, Solana, DEX, and NFT marketplace, NFT trading surpassed Ethereum. But that wasn't...
Didn't that already happen?
It already happened, but I don't think it lasted. I think it happened for maybe 1 or 2 days. and then Polygon came back, Arbitrum came back, etc. But I think as time goes on, at the end of the year, I can see Solana, DEX, and NFT trading sustainably surpassing, well, just becoming the number one in all the chains for the very simple reason that it's much cheaper to trade those things. By the way, I'm not saying the price of those NFTs will surpass, let's say the price of MATLADs. I'm not saying it'll surpass the price of Punks. I just don't know. But I think the trading volume of Solana NFTs will surpass everything else, every other chain. I don't think the price of Solana Sol will be close to Ethereum, assuming the ETH ETF gets approved. And there are some really easy predictions to make, like stablecoins will continue to grow. RWAs will continue to grow. Overall, the market will probably do okay. So last year, I predicted that the price a year from then would be substantially higher than at the beginning of the year. This year, I'm less certain of that because we went up so much last year. But overall, like big reasons to be bearish.
So consolidation
or up
and grind up.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your price prediction on WIF?
So last bull market, Doge went to what, 80 billion?
Okay. Oh shit! WIF just hit 40 cents.
Yeah, it did this morning.
Oh, it did?
I think anywhere, assuming WIF gets listed, I think that's the main obstacle for WIF, getting listed on Coinbase and Binance.
Yeah.
Assuming that happens, anywhere between 10 billion to 100 billion is fair game. That order of magnitude.
Got it. Not financial advice.
Not financial advice. And there is a big risk that it doesn't get listed.
It could go to zero.
Yeah, could go to zero.
How about Pudgy Penguins? Where do you see Pudgy Penguins?
At the end of the year, close to Punks, but not flipping.
Sounds reasonable.
It's my favorite NFT in all of crypto.
Where do you think Bitcoin and Ethereum will be trading at? More or less end of this year?
Higher end of the year. Of course, the range is huge. We could be at 30 at the end of the year or 150 at the end of the year. Huge distribution there, but on average, I would say higher, slightly higher. It's a super cycle. I think people are still stuck in the 4-year cycle mindset. I think the sooner you get out of that mindset, the better. My base case is that we actually have been in a super cycle, and the only reason why the chart doesn't show that is because we had a very unlucky confluence of two events in 2021. One is the Jerome rate hike, and the other one is all the fraud, the Terra, the FTX kind of things. But if these two things didn't happen, I think...
Yeah. So you're saying Suzu was right?
He drank his own Kool-Aid.
Too much.
And he leveraged long. If he didn't use any leverage, he would have been up right now, because right now Bitcoin is trading at 45 or something, 42, which is higher than at the point he got liquidated. So don't use leverage.
What startups would you like to see?
RWN payment. The data is so compelling. SocialFi, yes. SocialFi as well. I think it's a new asset class, and no one has cracked it.
No one's cracked it. I'm the most excited about SocialFi.
A lot of the things that we could have seen a few years ago, but haven't seen, was simply due to that the blockchain didn't scale. If the blockchain was faster, cheaper, then we probably would have seen SocialFi apps a while ago, because that kind of stuff requires pretty big trading fees. So scaling the blockchain really matters to enable...
Scaling, costs, I think UI, UX, infrastructure, all the things necessary to scale apps and users. RPCs.
I think we're going to see more login using Web2 credentials, using Google and Apple ID kind of user onboarding experience, and more mobile apps as well this year compared to desktop. And that, again, that's a very easy prediction to make, because that is the trend we're seeing, and there's no reason why the trend wouldn't continue.
All right. Well, we're at time, so it was a good roundup, and we will be back next week. We'll be recording a session with Sunny from Cosmosis, who's building within the Cosmos ecosystem. So if you have any questions, feel free to DM us. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to Good Game. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next week.